Hey YouTube, it's ShryphonX here. Today we're going to be talking about Chainsaw Man Chapter 231. Like and subscribe for more content. Chainsaw Man Resets. Chainsaw Man Chapter 231. Chainsaw Man Chapter 231 is titled Goodbye Pachita. This chapter has 15 pages. Bugs ended the world, yes. The chapter begins with the world ending. We are now seeing the end of Chainsaw Man's world because of, ironically, the death of death itself. The previous chapter was genius for revealing the most horrific fate worse than death. A world where all of life spams reproduction and consumes all other beings, resulting in every being and cell living in eternity without freedom. And in the last scene of the last chapter, we see Pachita and Denji, Asa and Yoru, two beings in one body, consumed by the bug devils. We see a familiar spot, the grave of Denji's father, where Pachita first met Denji, and Pachita pops up in dog form in front of Denji. Pachita tells Denji they are dead and their dream lives are over, but for Pachita, that is a good thing. Denji's addiction arc revealed, Pachita points out that no matter how fulfilled Denji may feel from sex or being a hero, he will never find lasting happiness in any way. Even when Denji found new family in the form of Nayuta, Meowie, and Mikima's dogs, even when he went to school to learn and be like a normal boy, or when he connected to Asa, part of him was still unhappy. Part 1 gave us the title drop moment when Denji was identified as Chainsaw Man in the Control Devil arc, where people gave the obvious name to people but became an owned identity by Denji in Chapter 92, Vanilla Sky, when he saw all the television screens call out his name. Like how Eren Yeager read Armin's book and desired an empty plane of a world beyond the walls, or Johann Liebert finally reading The Nameless Monster after supposedly living it vicariously through his twin sister and his memories. Denji also experienced this defining moment that sealed his tragic fate, staring at a television screen as the masses cheer his name. Ever since then, he kept anticipating sex, kisses, and the love of people who will never truly love Denji. Like how Denji complained to Reese about every girl going after his devil heart. Not his Denji heart. Denji deep down is fighting the knowledge that the world and every woman around him will only love Chainsaw Man, the hero of hell. This was Mikima's whole plan, to create Chainsaw Man, the popular hero loved, not feared by humanity, as a way to weaken the contract between Pachita and Denji in order to take his heart, but also her greatest downfall, as she never saw Denji, and thus that led to her death, and she never truly loved Pachita, only the hero of hell. Because in spite of her greatest wish being the same as Pachita's, her ignorance shaped her in Denji's worldviews. While Mikima lost because of her ignorance to the Chainsaw Man she created, this was also Denji's downfall, as Part 2, like Denji, was a regression arc, a frustrating writing and reading experience where characters go further and further down. This is because Denji is more like an addict than a pervert or gooner. This addiction made Denji devalue the family he found after every loss. Chapter 184, Run, Denji, Run, in the Aging Devil arc shows how immortality ruined Denji's mind as a coping mechanism, since he believed that he can always start over, but never grow. This also made Denji devalue the intimate connection he shared with Asa, who actually cared about Denji as a person. And in relation to the story, he is constantly overloaded with stimulation from the world, and this keeps him locked from growth. Even as he enters young adulthood, Denji remains a victim of the same manipulations and the same tragedies, losing his second real home and then being left alone once again. And just like in the final arc of the series, when left alone, Denji was once again hooked by stimulation. War offered sex, and death flashed panties without even trying to seduce him. A direct offer of heroism from the world that created the control devil and Denji's ignorant perception of being stimulated. So when Pachita said that it was a good thing Denji never got what he wanted, he meant in kindness. Denji was too hooked to stimulation, and it finally stopped with the very end of the world. Unfortunately, it leads to one conclusion. Pachita has to go. Less happiness equals more. This brings us to a crucial philosophical paradox. More suffering in life equals more real happiness. Or, to put it in a less cruel way, the less stimulated a person is, the happier they are. Pachita sees that Denji was happier with himself and Pachita when they were both starving and struggling with poverty. But when Denji had possessions and even his found family that he truly loved, he was discontent. It was all because of his addiction to being a hero. Once he became Chainsaw Man, he saw higher ambitions. This all ties back to Rhee's question. To be a country mouse or a city mouse in the original Aesop fable, the city mouse offered the boring country mouse a way out of the current ordinary peace by showing him wealth, higher goals. But the city mouse faced more danger in order to get these luxuries. In real life, rats who live in the cities are plentiful and eat higher quality food, but they face more traps and pesticides. And in relation to humans, those who seek more will always find more risk. Capitalism glamorizes risk-taking, but it also hides other paths to wealth, such as crime, being a norm for the upper class who are only content with the highs of life. And that is the point Pachita is making. Denji became the city mouse, unable to appreciate what he has at present, namely a loving family, and instead fearing the future where he is not Chainsaw Man. Like when Denji thought about getting a job. This is a realistic reflection of the struggles of youth to find fulfillment under capitalism. But as soon as he is stimulated by sex or any distraction, those worries go away. This is when Denji's character growth becomes stunted and is replaced by a momentary high that fans mistakenly misrepresent as Fujimoto being too into himself or Fujimoto's self inserting his pleasures, when in reality, this is Denji's overstimulation keeping him away from the harsh human reality of the world's constant anxiety. So when Pachita compared Denji's suffering with his prosperity, Pachita sees the suffering, hungry, poor Denji as happier and content because there was nothing else fed to him. He could get his own food and live by his terms, even when oppressed by the Yakuza's debt. It was not that Pachita was justifying the debt bondage or poverty, but that regardless of the oppressiveness of poverty, Denji was happier without the added luxuries of the city mouse. It was better if Denji only sought to eat jam toast and simply wished for a peaceful, ordinary life. Something Rhys deeply wanted. Even she struggled with the paradox. She wanted to be the city mouse that had her own life outside of being a spy or being an orphan used by the world. But deep down, she wanted to escape from worldly oppression and inherent loneliness together with someone she started to care for like Denji to a world where they can be country mice. This sounds like one of the lessons of the Book of Job. Dependence on the Lord brought Job real satisfaction, while prosperity and even his possession over his own family blinded him from acknowledging that no matter his circumstances, God was always there, and so is happiness. Pachita transforms into his true form as the Chainsaw Devil. He points out that Denji always had a crappy brain, one that found heaven and hell. Pachita gently hugs Denji, which is pointed out is pretty hard for him to do in the real world because he is too strong. After all, his body is made of sharp chainsaws. And suddenly, Depression Pachita takes out his own heart. Pachita declares that he will eat himself, and he is not sure what is going on happen afterwards. A world where Pachita never existed will be made. This has a lot of implications. Anyway, Pachita does say he is satisfied since he has seen his dreams come true by living in Denji's body. More importantly, Pachita believes that in a chainsaw-less world, Denji can keep on dreaming. Yet this is spoken with such a sad, depressing voice. Pachita sees himself as the nexus of all misery, the cause of Denji's suffering. Pachida only wanted to be loved, but his existence is imposed upon the world as a perpetuator of a deeper suffering than the status quo has given. Imagine being loved by someone, only to realize your presence is suffocating them. Parents can relate to this quite so. They would see that their affection and even living their dreams out with their children is holding them back. So letting go and keeping a distance so their children can leave the nest and fly is the only way for those children to keep dreaming. And yet in Pachida's case, no matter what he does, he will always be feared or sought after. And he is someone Denji loves, so Denji will not want Pachida gone in any way. And yet Pachida's heart is what keeps Denji alive. So it is either that Pachida keeps living so Denji does, or that Pachida erases himself so that Denji can be alive, just without him. To be born only to die. Except that death is a necessity because to live is to curse the world itself, and, worst of all, to curse the existence of the ones you love. The complete Pachida arc, there's an old theory on Reddit about how Pachida could have weakened himself enough to be defeated by the horsemen. The idea of Pachida eating himself was brought up since Pachida explained that his dream was to be embraced by someone, but it was impossible due to his strength and how his body could hurt others, and in turn be unable to feel the warmth of a hug. Chapter 97, I Love. Chainsaw completes Part 1's narrative so strongly because it ties to how Pachida fell from the weapon devils and 4 horsemen fighting him. Pachida killed so many devils that he gained their fear, and that fear, or perhaps the original purpose of chainsaws, which was to remove umbilical cords and bring life to the world, was the devil's version of fate worse than death, like the deathless world that had an infinite bug glitch. Because being forgotten is a fate worse than death. Because of his reputation as the hero of hell, Pachida could not be loved. There might have been weaker devils victimized by stronger devils, whether due to wanting to eat them or to enslave them, or if humans were the main victims of devils, calling out for help. But none of the people Pachida saved could connect with him. Pachida felt the loneliness that came with absolute strength, as the strongest like Satoru Gojo and Ryaman Sukuna of Jujutsu Kaisen have experienced. So he went on to challenge the heights of devil hierarchy, the death devil, the ultimate primal fear, and her sisters, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, alongside war devils' pawns, the weapon devils, minus her actual children, gun and tank devils. Pachida erased the names of the weapons, yet their use remains. Pachida grievously wounded the war devil, and a stalemate was maintained. Perhaps Pachida killed the control devil at this time, which resulted in her becoming Makima, a more modern incarnation, but that is assuming she was only alive for about 20 years like a normal human. But Pachida did not want to erase all of them, knowing that the loss of too many concepts will break the real world. Instead, he wanted himself to be weakened. And even as he was weakened, there was still hell's fear of him sustaining his being. Humans still feared the scary black chainsaw man even before Denji came along. Who knows? So whether during the battle or before it, Pachida ate parts of himself, erasing more and more of his power. Likely, he even saw this phenomenon when fighting the war devil, who was not totally destroyed for fighting Pachida. Pachida would escape and take the form of a dog devil, now in the form where he could fulfill his dreams. But after living as Denji's heart, as the desire to the Chainsaw Man universe, he realized that he was only bringing himself and Denji down. Pachida had the centuries of self-awareness that Denji lacked or chose to shut off due to overstimulation. He saw that Denji becoming a hero and gaining the unyielding desire for more sex and more affection had only driven him low. And the worst part is the realization that Pachida is the reason for it, the one who wanted this dream for himself, only to be his own downfall. And by devouring himself, we enter a new world. Back to the shack in the forest where Denji lived, but this time, there are no chainsaws to cut so many trees down. Just as there is no superweapon like Chainsaw Man to kill so many devils. A world without Chainsaw Man has so many implications. One of which is that so much of what Chainsaw Man has done has essentially built the world of this series. The erasure of the Nazi devil, the AIDS devil, and others, as well as the current erasure of death, have altered history. By erasing himself, who has erased so many primal and human concepts, will this lead to a full reset of events or a present world with an older status quo? Not possible. The world without death and memories, the first and more obvious pick, is that the world made from this starting point of the series, such that we may likely see either young Denji or the adult Denji. Regardless, this Denji will never remember anyone he meets after meeting Pachida. He will encounter people quite differently from the main story. Perhaps he will reunite with Power or Asa or even Aki and the rest, forming bonds, or maybe never meeting them, since he is no longer a successful devil hunter with a chainsaw dog. However, due to the complications behind erasure, let us assume that Chainsaw Man was erased alongside the devils he ate, including Death herself. We know that this type of world will result in an infinite bug glitch. For the deathless world to still make sense, some countermeasures will weaken the new threat, the bugs and bug devils, perhaps in the form of the war devil gaining strength. Yet if you think about the implications already shown in previous chapters, this type of world may not be possible. A normal world with devils and dreams, this leads to a clearer possible outcome. Without Pachida, Chainsaw Man as a story would not exist. But this is also a world where the hero of hell was erased, meaning that all the devils he ate, including death, are still around. The devils are less fearful now, and so many concepts that were once erased now exist. We enter the real world except with devils. This is a fresh start. Denji has no memories of Pachida, which means he has never met anyone we have met in this story. Thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe for more content. ShryphonX out.